In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where civilizations rise and fall like waves upon cosmic shores, there exists a universal truth that even the most advanced species whisper in fearful reverence. Never underestimate a species that has survived its own worst impulses. The Galactic Council had cataloged over 10,000 sentient races across 47 spiral arms. They had witnessed the birth of stellar empires, the collapse of dimensional gates, and the transcendence of beings into pure energy. Yet in all their eons of observation, they had never encountered a species quite like humanity. Most races, upon achieving faster-than-light travel, sought out the Council for guidance, protection, or simply the comfort of knowing they were not alone. But humans? Humans arrived with battle scars still fresh, carrying the weight of wars that had nearly consumed their own world, and bearing a simple message that would forever change the fabric of galactic civilization. We've been through hell already. Now we're here to make sure no one else has to. What the Council didn't understand, what they couldn't possibly comprehend, was that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology, their numbers, or even their adaptability. It was their absolute, unwavering refusal to let others suffer the way they once had. This is the story of how Earth's children became the galaxy's guardians, and why across 1,000,000 worlds, parents tell their young ones, "Sleep peacefully tonight," for the humans watch the darkness, ensuring no one will ever make you go through what they survived. The first human ship to reach the Galactic Council's central hub was not what anyone expected. While most newcomers arrived in gleaming vessels designed to impress, the human ship appeared to be held together by determination and spite. Its hull bore scars from countless battles, patches welded over older patches, and burn marks that told stories of desperate fights for survival. Ambassador Zeth Kree of the Valerian Collective watched through the observation deck's crystalline walls as the battered vessel approached Station Prime. The ship moved with purpose, its flight pattern precise despite its weathered appearance. There was something unsettling about its approach, not aggressive, but carrying an unmistakable weight of experience. They call themselves humans, reported Navigation Controller Yultar, her 4 arms dancing across the holographic interface. Their home world is designated Sol 3, though they refer to it as Earth. Long-range scans indicate they've achieved faster-than-light capability only recently. Zeth Kree's scaled brow ridges furrowed. Recent FDL achievers typically sent probe ships first, then small diplomatic vessels crewed by their finest ambassadors. This ship, however, registered as a heavy cruiser with military-grade shielding and weapon systems that seemed improvised yet effective. Have they requested docking permissions? Zeth Kree asked. They have, Ambassador, but there's something peculiar about their transmission. They're not asking for trade agreements, territorial negotiations, or protection pacts. They're asking for... Yiltar paused, double-checking her translation matrix. For information about civilizations currently under threat or experiencing crisis situations. The ambassador's secondary hearts skipped a beat. In 12 centuries of first contact protocols, no species had ever made such a request. New civilizations invariably focused on their own needs first: resources, security, technology exchange. Yet these humans seemed more interested in others' problems than their own advancement. The docking bay hummed with nervous energy as Station Prime security forces took positions. Not because the humans posed a threat. Their communications had been cordial and respectful, but because their ship's readings were anomalous. The vessel's power core registered signatures consistent with military-grade reactors. Yet the crew complement was surprisingly small for such a large ship. When the airlock finally cycled open, the first human to step onto Station Prime was not what the assembled dignitaries expected. She was tall by human standards, with short-cropped brown hair and eyes that seemed to hold depths of experience far beyond her apparent age. Her uniform was practical, well-maintained, but bore subtle signs of extensive use. Most striking, however, were the small memorial patches sewn along her left sleeve, dozens of them, each representing something lost. I am Captain Sarah Chun of the Earth Coalition Defense Force, she said, her voice carrying a quiet authority that filled the docking bay. I come bearing greetings from humanity and a simple offer. We want to help. Ambassador Zeth Kree stepped forward, his diplomatic training taking over despite his confusion. Welcome to Station Prime, Captain Chun. I am Ambassador Zeth Kree, representing the Galactic Council in matters of first contact. Your arrival is unprecedented. Most new civilizations seek assistance upon joining the galactic community. You offer it instead. Captain Chin's expression softened slightly. We've learned that strength without purpose is just destruction waiting to happen. Our species has seen what happens when people are left to face darkness alone. We're here to make sure that doesn't happen to anyone else. The formal first contact ceremony proceeded in the council chambers, a magnificent hall carved from a single asteroid and lined with viewing galleries for the various member species. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered to witness humanity's introduction to the cosmic community. As Captain Chun stood before the assembled council, her small diplomatic team flanking her, the weight of history seemed to press down upon the chamber. The council had welcomed over 300 species to its ranks, but this felt different. There is something in the humans' bearing, in the way they carried themselves, that spoke of hard-won wisdom. Honored council members, Captain Chun began, humanity comes before you not as supplicants, but as equals who have earned their place through trial by fire. Our world has known war, devastation, and near extinction. We have looked into the abyss of our own making and chosen to step back from the brink. Council Speaker Morgeth, an ancient being whose crystalline form had witnessed the rise of civilizations across millennia, leaned forward. Your records indicate that your species achieved global unity only recently. The transition from planetary to galactic civilization typically requires centuries of cultural evolution. How did humanity accomplish this transformation so rapidly? Captain Chun exchanged glances with her team members. Dr. James Rodriguez, their xenobiologist, gave an almost imperceptible nod. Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka, their military liaison, straightened slightly. They had prepared for this question, but the answer was not one easily explained. We didn't have centuries, Speaker Morgeth, Captain Chun replied. 57 years ago, our world nearly ended, not from external threats, but from our own inability to coexist. We came within hours of total nuclear annihilation. In that moment, facing the complete extinction of everything we held dear, humanity made a choice. The chamber fell silent. Even species that had witnessed galactic wars had rarely faced the prospect of complete self-annihilation. We chose to change, Captain Chun continued. Not gradually, not over generations, but immediately. We looked at what we had almost done to ourselves and said never again. Not just for us, but for anyone. We rebuilt our world on a simple principle. No one should have to go through what we put ourselves through. Representative Klex VEA of the Hegemony Worlds, a militaristic species known for their expansionist policies, spoke up. Words are simple, Captain Chun. Actions require sacrifice. What has humanity actually done to demonstrate this philosophy? Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward. In the past 57 years, humanity has eliminated poverty on Earth, ended all armed conflicts, reversed climate damage, and achieved sustainable population growth. We've done this not through conquest or exploitation, but through voluntary cooperation and shared sacrifice. Every human child learns from birth that their strength exists to protect others, not to dominate them. Lieutenant Commander Tanaka added, our military exists solely for defense and humanitarian purposes. Every weapon we build, every ship we launch, every soldier we train is dedicated to one mission, ensuring that suffering ends with us. The council members exchanged glances, their various forms of communication creating a subtle symphony of clicks, harmonics, and electromagnetic pulses. This was far beyond their normal parameters for first contact. Most species required careful integration, gradual exposure to galactic politics, and extensive monitoring to ensure they wouldn't destabilize the cosmic order. Your offer of assistance is admirable, Speaker Morgeth said finally. However, the galaxy is vast and complex. There are conflicts and crises that have persisted for millennia, problems that even our most advanced civilizations have been unable to solve. What makes humanity believe it can succeed where others have failed? Captain Chin's expression grew somber. Because we've been there, Speaker. We've stood at the edge of oblivion and found our way back. We know what it's like to lose everything and have to rebuild from ashes. We understand desperation, fear, and the rage that comes from feeling powerless. But we also know that these things can be overcome. She gestured to her team. Every human in our space fleet is a volunteer. They've left behind comfortable lives on a healing world to venture into the unknown, not for glory or conquest, but because they can't bear the thought of others suffering while they have the power to help. We don't claim to have all the answers, but we promise to stand with anyone facing darkness, no matter the cost. The silence that followed was profound. In all their eons of existence, the Council had never encountered a species that defined its purpose not by what it could gain, but by what it could give. The implications were staggering and, to many, deeply unsettling. Representative Nixandra of the Synthesis Alliance, a collective consciousness spanning multiple star systems, finally spoke. This philosophy you described, it requires extraordinary unity among your people. How do you maintain such cohesion without suppressing individual freedom? Dr. Rodriguez smiled. Because choosing to help others is the ultimate expression of individual freedom. On Earth, we have a saying, no one is free until everyone is free. Our children grow up understanding that their personal happiness is inextricably linked to the well-being of all life. It's not forced compliance. It's enlightened self-interest elevated to a moral imperative. As the formal session concluded, the council members retreated to their private chambers to discuss this unprecedented situation. The humans had presented no formal requests, demanded no territories, asked for no technology transfers. They had simply offered their assistance and asked where they were needed most. In his private office, Ambassador Zethkri reviewed the human ship's specifications again. The vessel was indeed a warship, but its design philosophy was unlike anything in the galactic database. Every system seemed optimized not for conquest or intimidation, but for endurance and protection. The ship could take incredible punishment while safeguarding its crew, and its defensive capabilities far outweighed its offensive ones. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission from his aide. Ambassador, the humans have made an unusual request. They're asking for access to our crisis monitoring systems, not for strategic advantage, but so they can identify situations where assistance might be needed. Zethkri's scales shifted color, betraying his concern. The crisis monitoring systems tracked everything from natural disasters to armed conflicts across thousands of worlds. No species had ever requested such access without seeking to exploit the information for territorial or economic gain. Have them schedule an appointment, he said finally. I want to understand these humans better before we make any decisions that could reshape galactic politics. As Station Prime settled into its night cycle, Captain Chin stood alone in her ship's observation deck, looking out at the swirling nebula that surrounded the station. Her crew was resting, preparing for whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. She thought of Earth, now 47 light years away, where children played in parks that had once been radioactive wastelands, where former enemies worked together to heal wounds that had seemed permanent. Humanity had indeed earned its place among the stars, but not through conquest or technological superiority. They had earned it through suffering, transformation, and an unshakable commitment to ensure that no one else would have to walk the dark path they had traveled. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to have guardians who had forged their strength in the fires of their own redemption. And, in the depths of space, ancient threats that had terrorized civilizations for eons would soon discover that some species emerged from their darkest hours not broken, but unbreakable. 3 weeks after humanity's arrival at Station Prime, the crisis that would define their role in the galaxy emerged from the Veil sector, a region of space notorious for its unstable star systems and mysterious disappearances. The emergency alert reached the Council chambers at 0347 Standard Galactic Time, carried by a badly damaged probe ship that had barely escaped with its data intact. Captain Chun was in her quarters, reviewing psychological profiles of refugee populations when the priority transmission reached her ship. The message was brief but chilling. The entire Calathi system, home to over 4 billion sentient beings, was under siege by an unknown force that had already consumed 2 neighboring systems. Within minutes, the human delegation was rushing through Station Prime's corridors toward the emergency assembly hall. The usually composed council members were in visible distress, their various forms of agitation creating a cacophony of worried sounds and electromagnetic signatures. Speaker Morgeth's crystalline form pulsed with urgent light patterns as he addressed the gathered representatives. The situation in the Calathi system has escalated beyond our worst projections. The attacking force appears to be technological in nature, but operates unlike any known artificial intelligence or automated defense system. They consume entire planets, converting biomass and mineral resources into more units of themselves. Representative Klexvia's armored carapace clicked with anxiety. Our long-range scouts report that the attackers show no interest in communication or negotiation. They simply arrive, overwhelm planetary defenses, and strip everything of value. The Calathi have perhaps 48 hours before their homeworld falls. Captain Chun felt a familiar cold settling in her stomach. The same feeling she'd experienced during the resource wars on Earth when entire populations faced extinction. What response have you authorized, Speaker? The Council has voted to establish a defensive perimeter around the outer systems to prevent further spread, Morgeth replied. We cannot risk exposing our member worlds to this threat while we lack understanding of the enemy's capabilities. Dr. Rodriguez, who had been monitoring the tactical displays, looked up sharply. You're abandoning 4 billion people? An uncomfortable silence filled the chamber. Ambassador Zethkri spoke carefully. Dr. Rodriguez, the Council must consider the greater good. We cannot sacrifice established civilizations to save those that may already be lost. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Captain Chun felt something familiar rising within her. The same feeling that had driven her ancestors to stand against impossible odds. The same fire that had forged humanity's transformation. She looked around the chamber at beings who represented thousands of advanced civilizations, all choosing safety over salvation. How long would it take to mount a rescue operation? She asked. Lieutenant Commander Tanaka was already working her portable tactical computer. Based on the enemy's advancement rate and our ship's capabilities, we could reach Calathi Prime in 36 hours if we push our engines to maximum. Representative Nixandra's collective voice carried notes of concern. Captain Chun, surely you cannot be considering a rescue mission with a single ship against an enemy that has defeated entire system defense fleets. Captain Chun stood, her presence somehow filling the vast chamber despite her relatively small stature. Representative Nixandra, humanity learned something important during our darkest hour. Sometimes the right choice and the safe choice are not the same thing. We didn't ask for membership in this council to hide behind defensive perimeters while billions die. Speaker Morgeth's light patterns shifted to warning colors. Captain, the council appreciates your species' noble intentions, but this is not Earth's internal affair. You lack authority to commit council resources to what amounts to a suicide mission. Then, we're not asking for council resources, Captain Chun replied. We're informing you of our intention to act. Dr. Rodriguez, prepare the emergency medical bay for refugee processing. Commander Tanaka, plot a course for the Calathi system and ready all defense systems. We leave in 1 hour. The chamber erupted in a symphony of protests from various species. Emergency lights began flashing as translators struggled to process the overlapping voices of hundreds of representatives demanding explanations, offering warnings, and, in some cases, expressing admiration for humanity's resolve. Ambassador Zeth Kree rose from his seat. Captain Shun, I must formally protest this action. The Galactic Council has existing protocols for crisis response. Your unilateral intervention could destabilize. Ambassador, Captain Shun interrupted, her voice carrying a quiet intensity that cut through the chaos. With respect, your protocols are about to let 4 billion people die because saving them might be dangerous. Humanity has seen what happens when good people choose safety over justice. We've decided that's not who we want to be, Dr. Rodriguez added. Every simulation we've run shows that containment strategies against exponentially self-replicating threats eventually fail. The only sustainable response is elimination of the threat at its source, before it grows beyond any possibility of defeat. Representative Klexvier's warrior instincts seem to appreciate the logic. The humans may have a point about threat assessment, but their single ship cannot succeed where system defense fleets have failed. Commander Tanaka looked up from her tactical analysis. Maybe not in direct combat, Representative Klexvier, but our ship wasn't designed for direct combat. Earth Coalition vessels are built around a different philosophy. We don't try to outfight superior forces, we outthink them. Speaker Morgeth's crystalline form dimmed with what might have been resignation. Captain Shun, if you proceed with this mission, you do so without council sanction or support. Should you survive, there may be consequences for Earth's standing in the galactic community. Captain Shin nodded solemnly. Speaker Morgeth, humanity appreciates your concern for our political standing. But if we survive, and 4 billion Kelethi are saved, I think we can live with whatever consequences follow. The human delegation left the chamber in purposeful silence, their footsteps echoing through corridors that had rarely witnessed such decisive action. As they walked, crew members of various species watched with expressions ranging from admiration to bewilderment. Word of humanity's mission was spreading throughout Station Prime. Aboard their ship, the crew of the ECDS Redemption worked with practiced efficiency to prepare for what could very well be their final mission. The ship's name had been chosen carefully during its construction. Humanity's first true starship was meant to embody their species' journey from the brink of self-destruction to galactic citizenship. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb, a man whose hands bore scars from rebuilding Earth's devastated infrastructure, ran final diagnostics on their experimental shield systems. Captain, I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from our defensive grid. The quantum resonance chambers are operating beyond normal parameters. Intentionally or malfunction? Captain Shin asked, reviewing her own set of departure protocols. Intentionally, mal. Dr. Kim's modifications to the shielding are designed to adapt to unknown energy weapons. The system learns from each impact and adjusts its defensive frequencies accordingly. Dr. Priya Kim, their theoretical physicist, emerged from the engineering section with diagnostic pad in hand. The adaptive shielding should give us significant survivability against energy-based weapons, but it's completely untested against the kind of conversion technology the enemy is reportedly using. Captain Shun gathered her senior staff in the ship's war room, a circular chamber designed not for planning attacks, but for coordinating humanitarian operations under hostile conditions. The holographic display showed the Kelethi system in real time, transmitted by long-range sensors. The images were devastating. 2 outer planets showed no signs of life, their surfaces stripped bare of organic matter and converted into geometric patterns that pulsed with alien energy. Kelethi Prime itself was partially shrouded by a growing cloud of mechanical constructs, each the size of a small city, systematically harvesting resources from the planet's surface. Analysis, Commander Tanaka. The lieutenant commander highlighted specific areas of the tactical display. The enemy force appears to be entirely automated, but with sophisticated coordination protocols. They're not randomly consuming resources. They're following an optimization pattern designed to maximize conversion efficiency while minimizing energy expenditure. Dr. Rodriguez studied the biological scans. Captain, I'm detecting massive refugee populations concentrated in the planet's underground cave systems. The Kelethi appear to have evacuated their major population centers and are hiding in natural shelters. They're buying time, but their life support won't last more than a few days. Chief Webb frowned at the engineering displays. Those conversion units are massive, but they appear to be vulnerable during resource processing. If we could coordinate our attack with their harvesting cycles. We're not attacking, Chief, Captain Shin said firmly. We're rescuing. The difference matters. Dr. Kim looked up from her quantum calculations. Captain, there might be a way to use their own technology against them. If these units are converting matter at the molecular level, they must be generating enormous amounts of quantum interference. We could potentially use that interference to mask a large-scale evacuation. Captain Chun studied the data, her mind working through possibilities that the Council's strategic planners had dismissed as impossible. How many people could we evacuate in a single operation? With our current cargo capacity and life support systems, maybe 50,000 per trip, Dr. Rodriguez calculated. But that's only a fraction of the total population. Then we make multiple trips, Captain Chun said simply. We keep going until everyone is safe or our ship can't fly anymore. Commander Tanaka's expression grew concerned. Captain, the logistics alone. We need to coordinate with Kelethi authorities, establish safe landing zones, protect evacuation sites from enemy forces, and we need to do it all while the planet is under active siege. Commander, during the European famine crisis of 2157, humanity evacuated 12 million people from flood zones using nothing but civilian aircraft and sheer determination. We didn't have military escorts or safe landing zones then, either. We had people who needed help and the refusal to abandon them. Chief Webb nodded slowly. The ship can handle the stress, Captain. The Redemption was built to take punishment and keep flying. That's what Earth Coalition ships do. As the ship prepared for departure, word of the human mission spread throughout the galaxy's communication networks. On worlds across dozens of star systems, beings who had never heard of humanity watched in fascination as this newcomer species prepared to risk everything for people they had never met. The Kelethi themselves huddled in their underground shelters while mechanical horrors stripped their world bare above them, received an impossible transmission. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Earth Coalition Defense Force. We're coming to get you. Hold on just a little longer. In the depths of space, ancient monitoring stations that had observed galactic civilization for eons recorded an anomaly. For the first time in recorded history, a species was deliberately flying toward certain destruction not for conquest, territory, or resources, but simply because others needed help. The Redemption launched from Station Prime at 0800 hours, its scarred hull gleaming under the station's navigation lights. As it accelerated toward the edge of Council space, hundreds of beings watched from observation decks, unsure whether they were witnessing humanity's finest hour or their final act. Captain Chun stood on her bridge, surrounded by officers who had volunteered for what everyone knew was likely a suicide mission. Each of them had left behind family, friends, and comfortable lives on Earth to be here, facing unknown enemies in defense of unknown allies. Captain Dr. Rodriguez said quietly, "Do you really think we can save them all?" Captain Shin watched the stars streak past as their ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying them toward a battle that would define humanity's place in the cosmic order. "Dr. Rodriguez," she replied, "I think we're about to find out what happens when you refuse to let anyone face their darkest hour alone. That's what we do. That's who we are. And that's why, no matter what happens next, no one will ever make the Kelethi go through this by themselves." The ship vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind a galaxy that was about to discover the true meaning of human determination. The Kelethi system's outer boundary was marked by debris fields that had once been thriving orbital stations and defensive platforms. As the Redemption dropped out of hyperspace, Captain Chun and her crew got their first close look at the enemy that had terrorized the galaxy's outer rim for months. The conversion units were unlike anything in human military databases. Each construct was roughly spherical, approximately 2 kilometers in diameter, with a surface that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Thousands of smaller units, each the size of a shuttlecraft, swarmed around them in complex patterns that suggested both intelligence and terrible purpose. Sensor readings, Commander Tanaka. The large units appear to be processor ships, Captain. They're breaking down matter at the atomic level and reconstituting it into more units. The smaller craft are harvester drones. They strip material from planetary surfaces and transport it to the processors. Dr. Kim's voice carried a note of scientific fascination mixed with horror. Captain, the energy readings are off the charts. Each processor unit is generating enough power to supply a major Earth city for decades. They're incredibly efficient at converting matter into energy and then energy back into structure matter. Chief Webb studied the tactical display with an engineer's eye. They're not just consuming randomly, Captain. Look at the pattern of their operations. They're systematically stripping the planet in a spiral formation, starting from the poles and working toward the equator. It's designed to maximize resource extraction while maintaining planetary structural integrity for as long as possible. Dr. Rodriguez's biological scanners were focused on Calathi Prime itself. Captain, I'm reading massive life sign concentrations in the planet's underground cave networks. The Calathi have evacuated their surface cities, but they're running out of time. Atmospheric composition in those caves shows dangerously high carbon dioxide levels. Captain Chin studied the enemy formations, her mind working through tactical possibilities. The Council's military advisors had been correct. A direct assault would be suicide. The human ship was heavily armed by Earth standards, but these constructs had already defeated fleets of vessels designed specifically for war. Dr. Kim, you mentioned using their quantum interference to mask our operations. How would that work in practice? The physicist brought up a three-dimensional model of the planet on the main display. The conversion process generates massive quantum field distortions as matter transitions between states. If we can synchronize our approach with their harvesting operations, we should be able to slip past their sensors during the moments when their own energy signatures are overwhelming their detection systems. Commander Tanaka highlighted specific approach vectors. We'd have approximately 30-second windows during each conversion cycle. That's enough time to reach the planet's surface, but extraction would require perfect timing. And if our timing is off, Captain Chin asked, then we get converted into raw materials along with everything else in the area. Chief Webb replied matter-of-factly. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. They were proposing to thread their ship through a chaotic field of world-consuming machines, relying on split-second timing and untested theories to avoid annihilation. Captain, came a voice from the communications station. Ensign Maria Santos, the ship's linguist, was monitoring emergency frequencies. I'm receiving transmissions from the Calathi underground shelters. They know we're here. The main display shifted to show a communication feed. The face that appeared was clearly non-human, elongated features with large, dark eyes and skin that seemed to shimmer with bioluminescent patterns. Despite the alien appearance, the expression was unmistakably one of desperate hope. Unknown vessel. This is Administrator Veltar of the Calathi Emergency Council. We have monitored your approach and cannot comprehend your purpose. Our defensive fleets have been destroyed. Our orbital stations have been consumed. What do you hope to accomplish that our military could not? Captain Chin moved to the communication station. Administrator Veltar, this is Captain Sarah Chun of the Earth Coalition Defense Force. We're here to evacuate your people. We're not here to fight these constructs. We're here to get you out before they finish their work. The Calathi administrator's bioluminescent patterns flickered in what might have been confusion. Captain Chun, our population in the underground shelters numbers over 3 billion souls. Even if your vessel could transport such numbers, which seems impossible given its size, where would you take us? One group at a time, Administrator. And as for where, the galaxy is vast, and there are many worlds willing to accept refugees. The Council may not have authorized a rescue, but they won't turn away people in need once they're safe. Dr. Rodriguez leaned into the communication pickup. Administrator Veltar, we need to coordinate evacuation sites. Our ship can handle approximately 50,000 people per trip, but we need secure locations where we can land safely without attracting the attention of the conversion units. The Kelethi administrator's expression showed a mixture of hope and disbelief. You're truly willing to risk your lives for people you have never met? Your species has no obligation to the Kelethi. Captain Chen's voice carried the weight of human history. Administrator, my species learned that no one has an obligation to help until they choose to make it one. We've chosen to make it one. Now, can you identify secure landing zones? For the next 6 hours, the Redemption remained hidden in the shadow of a dead moon, while human and Kelethi technical specialists worked together to plan the most audacious rescue operation in galactic history. The conversion units continued their methodical work, oblivious to the small ship monitoring their patterns. Dr. Kim's analysis of the quantum interference fields proved accurate. Every 93 minutes, the processor units would synchronize their operations, creating massive energy discharges that temporarily blinded their sensor networks. These windows lasted exactly 31 seconds, providing just enough time for a fast ship to reach the planet's surface undetected. We'll have to move fast, Commander Tanaka explained during the mission briefing. Drop in during the interference window, load as many people as possible, and lift off before the next sensor sweep. If we're still on the ground when their systems come back online, we won't be, Captain Shin said firmly. Chief Webb, how are the cargo bay modifications coming? We've converted every available space into temporary passenger areas, Captain. Life support pods, emergency seating, even the shuttle bays. It's not comfortable, but it'll keep 50,000 people alive during transit. Dr. Rodriguez had been working with Kelethi medical personnel to prepare for the evacuation. Captain, we need to prioritize the most vulnerable populations, children, elderly, anyone with medical conditions that make them susceptible to the deteriorating air quality in the caves. The first rescue attempt began at 1,347 hours. The Redemption waited until the conversion units entered their synchronization phase, then dropped toward the planet like a falling star. The ship's adaptive shields glowed with absorbed energy as they passed through fields of quantum distortion that would have torn apart less advanced vessels. Landing in the designated cave system, the crew worked with mechanical precision. Kelethi families emerged from hidden shelters, carrying only what they could hold in their arms. Children with large, frightened eyes were comforted by parents who whispered reassurances in their melodic language. The ship's cargo holds filled rapidly as streams of refugees moved through the loading ramps. Human crew members worked alongside Kelethi volunteers to organize the boarding process, their different anatomies and physiologies requiring careful coordination. 28 seconds until sensor window closes, Commander Tanaka announced over the ship's communication system. Captain Chun watched the last group of refugees board, an elderly Kelethi carrying what appeared to be a young grandchild, both of them looking back at the caves that had sheltered their extended family. The pain of separation was written in every line of their bodies. The Redemption lifted off with 3 seconds to spare, accelerating rapidly away from the planet's surface just as the conversion unit sensors came back online. Scans showed no indication that their presence had been detected. During the 48-hour journey to the nearest Council world willing to accept refugees, the ship became a floating city of hope and despair. Kelethi families huddled together in improvised living spaces, sharing stories and trying to process the reality of their situation. Dr. Rodriguez worked tirelessly to ensure the medical needs of their passengers were met. The ship's systems had been pushed far beyond their design specifications, but they held together through a combination of excellent engineering and sheer determination. Captain, Ensign Santos reported during the transit, I'm receiving communications from several Council worlds. Word of our mission is spreading throughout the galaxy. Some representatives are calling for formal censure of humanity for unauthorized intervention. Captain Chun was in the ship's medical bay, helping Dr. Rodriguez treat a young Kellethy suffering from respiratory distress caused by the cave's poor air quality. And the others? Others are preparing refugee centers and offering assistance. The Terran Republic has pledged to accept 2 million Kellethy refugees. The Federation of Peaceful Worlds has committed to housing another million. Even some non-council civilizations are offering aid. When they delivered the first group of refugees to New Geneva Station, the scene was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. Kellethy families stepped on solid ground for the first time in weeks, many of them collapsing to their knees in relief and exhaustion. Captain Chun had no time to rest. The moment the last refugee disembarked, the Redemption was turning around for another run, and another, and another. 7 trips, 14 days. 350,000 lives saved. On the 8th trip, everything went wrong. The conversion units had adapted to their intrusion. As the Redemption descended through the quantum interference field, massive tendrils of energy erupted from the nearest processor unit, reaching across space like grasping fingers. Evasive maneuvers. Captain Chun shouted as the ship shook under the impact of alien weapons that operated on principles human science couldn't fully comprehend. Chief Webb's voice carried over the intercom from engineering. Captain, the adaptive shields are working, but they're taking enormous punishment. We can't sustain this kind of bombardment for long. On the planet's surface, over 2 million Kellethys still waited in the underground shelters, watching their world die above them while a single human ship fought impossible odds to save them. The real test of humanity's resolve was about to begin. The Redemption tumbled through space, its hull glowing cherry red from the alien energy weapons that had found their mark. Emergency klaxons wailed throughout the ship as damage control teams raced to contain cascading system failures. The 8th rescue mission had become a fight for survival. Captain Chun pulled herself upright from where the last impact had thrown her against the command console. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead, but her eyes remained focused on the tactical display, showing the conversion units closing in on their position. "Damage report," she called out over the noise of sparking electronics and emergency announcements. Chief Webb's voice came through the intercom, strained but steady. "Main engines are offline. Primary power grid has multiple breaches. Life support is running on backup systems. Captain, we've got maybe 20 minutes of power left at current consumption rates." Dr. Kim looked up from her science station, her face pale. The quantum interference field is collapsing. Whatever these constructs are doing, they're learning to compensate for our shielding technology. The adaptive systems can't keep up with their rate of evolution. On the planet below, Administrator Veltar's voice crackled through the damaged communication system. "Captain Chun, we detect severe damage to your vessel. Please withdraw while you still can. 2 million Kellethy lives are not worth the sacrifice of your crew and ship." Captain Chun wiped blood from her eyes and smiled grimly. "Administrator, with respect, that's not your decision to make. Dr. Rodriguez, how many people can we fit if we strip out everything non-essential?" "Captain, the ship is barely holding together. If we overload it further, how many, Doctor?" Dr. Rodriguez ran rapid calculations on her damaged console. "If we remove all comfort systems, use every available space, including maintenance shafts and storage compartments, maybe 75,000. But, Captain, without proper life support distribution, the mortality rate would be significant." Commander Tanaka was studying the enemy movement patterns on her tactical display. "Captain, they're adapting faster than our systems can compensate. Each time we modify our approach, they counter it within minutes. It's like they're specifically designed to learn and overcome any defensive strategy." The ship shuddered again as another energy tendril brushed against their weakened shields. The lights flickered, and somewhere in the distance, another system failed with a sound like screaming metal. "Chief Webb," Captain Chun called to engineering. "Can you give me one more run? Just one more approach to the planet." There was a long pause before the chief engineer responded. "Captain, I can probably get the engines online long enough to reach the surface. Getting back off the planet, that's going to require some creative engineering that might not survive contact with physics." Captain Chin looked around her bridge at officers who had followed her into the impossible and were prepared to follow her beyond it. Each face showed the strain of their situation, but none showed any intention of abandoning their mission. "Open a channel to all Kelathi emergency shelters," she ordered. Ensign Santos nodded, her hands dancing over the communications controls. "Channel open, Captain. This is Captain Shun to all Kelathi survivors. We're coming down one more time. This will likely be our final approach, as our ship is severely damaged. We can take approximately 75,000 people. I need you to coordinate among yourselves to determine who boards our ship." The response from Administrator Veltar came quickly. "Captain, we cannot ask you to sacrifice yourselves for our people. The Kelathi will not be responsible for the deaths of those who came to help us." "Administrator, you're not asking. We're choosing. There's a difference." Captain Shin paused, then continued with quiet intensity. "My species learned something important when we almost destroyed ourselves. Every life has infinite value, and no one should face their darkest hour alone. That principle doesn't change just because the situation becomes difficult." Dr. Kim looked up from her station, her voice tight with concern. "Captain, I'm detecting something unusual in the conversion unit's energy signatures. They're not just adapting to our technology, they're incorporating it. Each time they analyze our shields or weapons, they're adding that knowledge to their collective understanding." Commander Tanaka's tactical analysis painted an even grimmer picture, which means every ship that's ever fought them has made them stronger. They're not just consuming matter, they're consuming information, tactical knowledge, even ship design principles. The implications hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. The reason the conversion units have been so successful wasn't just their technological superiority, it was their ability to learn from and counter every strategy used against them. Every failed defense had made them more dangerous. That's why the Council's containment strategy was doomed from the start, Dr. Rodriguez said quietly. These things don't just consume resources, they consume knowledge. The longer they exist, the more unstoppable they become. Captain Shun studied the tactical display, her mind working through possibilities that seemed to grow more hopeless by the minute. Then something occurred to her, a memory from Earth's history that might hold the key to an impossible victory. "Dr. Kim, you said they incorporate knowledge from every ship they encounter?" "That's correct, Captain. They analyze defensive systems, weapon configurations, even basic ship architecture. It's how they've been able to counter every strategy the Council's fleets have used." "What about strategies they've never encountered before?" The physicist frowned. "I'm not sure I understand, Captain." Captain Shun turned to Chief Webb. "Chief, during the resource wars on Earth, what was the most effective tactic against technologically superior forces?" The engineer's eyes lit up with sudden understanding. "Asymmetric warfare. You don't fight the enemy's strengths, you exploit their assumptions." "Exactly. These constructs have learned to counter every military strategy ever used against them. But they've never encountered a ship that wasn't trying to fight them." Commander Tanaka leaned forward. "Captain, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we stop trying to sneak past them and start doing something they can't possibly have prepared for." Captain Chin's voice carried a note of grim determination. "We're going to surrender to them." The bridge fell silent except for the sounds of damaged systems struggling to maintain basic operations. The crew exchanged glances that ranged from confused to alarmed. "Captain," Dr. Rodriguez said carefully, "surrender typically involves being captured or destroyed. Neither option seems conducive to rescuing the remaining Kelathi." "Not that kind of surrender, Doctor. We're going to give them exactly what they want. Our ship, our technology, our knowledge. But we're going to do it on our terms." Chief Webb was beginning to follow her logic. "You want to let them capture the ship. I want them to try to convert the ship," Captain Chin corrected. "Dr. Kim, what happens during the matter conversion process?" "The constructs break down materials at the molecular level, then restructure them according to their design templates. It's incredibly efficient, but it requires them to completely understand the structure of what they're converting. And what if what they're trying to convert contains something they can't understand or predict?" Dr. Kim's expression shifted from confusion to horror to admiration in rapid succession. Captain, you're talking about turning our ship into a weapon. But the risks? The risk is that we die trying to save people instead of dying while running away, Captain Shin replied. Chief Webb, can you modify our power core to overload during a conversion attempt? The engineer was already working through calculations in his head. Captain, if we set up a cascade failure in the quantum containment field while they're trying to analyze it, the explosion would be significant. More than significant. Commander Tanaka studied the tactical implications. An explosion inside one of their processor units could potentially cause a chain reaction. If their systems are as interconnected as they appear to be, we could take out the entire local fleet, Dr. Rodriguez finished. But, Captain, the Kelethi on the planet would have a chance to evacuate on their own ships once the immediate threat is neutralized. Administrator Veltar, are you monitoring this conversation? The Kelethi leader's voice came through clearly despite the damaged communications array. Captain Shun, we are listening, and we must protest this sacrifice you are contemplating. The Kelethi cannot accept the destruction of those who came to save us. Administrator, you mentioned Kelethi evacuation ships still hidden in the cave systems? Yes, Captain. We have perhaps 24 vessels capable of interstellar flight. They have remained hidden to avoid detection, but they could evacuate perhaps 500,000 people if the immediate threat were removed. Captain Shin looked at her crew one final time. That's not everyone, but it's more than we could save with continued rescue runs. Chief Webb, how long do you need to prepare the power core modifications? Give me 30 minutes, Captain. Dr. Kim, I need you to work with Chief Webb to ensure the cascade failure occurs at the exact moment their conversion beam reaches maximum penetration of our hull. Captain, Commander Tanaka said quietly, there's no guarantee this will work. And if it fails, Commander, then at least we'll have died trying to save people instead of watching them die from a safe distance. That's the choice humanity made when we decided to become who we are now. As the crew prepared for what might be their final mission, word of humanity's desperate gambit spread throughout the galaxy's communication networks. On Council worlds, representatives watched in stunned silence as tactical feeds showed a single damaged human ship positioning itself directly in the path of the conversion fleet. The Kelethi worked frantically to prepare their hidden ships for immediate evacuation, knowing that their window of opportunity would be measured in minutes once the human plan succeeded or failed. In the depths of space, monitoring stations that had observed the rise and fall of civilizations for eons recorded another anomaly, a species that had chosen certain death over the mere possibility of abandoning others to their fate. The Redemption limped toward the conversion fleet, its weapons powered down, and its shields configured to appear maximally vulnerable. To any observer, it looked like a damaged ship attempting to flee the system, exactly the kind of easy target the construct had learned to prioritize. As the lead processor unit extended its conversion beam toward the human ship, Captain Shin stood on her bridge, surrounded by officers who had volunteered to follow her into the fire one last time. Whatever happens next, she said quietly, the galaxy will know that humanity kept its promise. No one had to face this alone. The conversion beam struck the Redemption's hull, and the final phase of humanity's first galactic mission began. The conversion beam struck the Redemption like a fist of concentrated starfire, and for a moment that lasted an eternity, Captain Shin watched her ship begin to die. The hull plates nearest the beam's impact point started to glow and shift, their molecular structure breaking down as alien technology attempted to understand and remake human engineering. On the bridge, displays flickered and died as systems throughout the ship began failing in carefully orchestrated sequence. Chief Webb had done his work well. To any external observer, the Redemption appeared to be succumbing to the conversion process exactly as thousands of other vessels had before. Conversion beam is penetrating Deck 7, Commander Tanaka reported, her voice steady despite the knowledge that they were all minutes away from either victory or annihilation. Energy patterns are consistent with the profiles we observed from previous attacks. Dr. Kim monitored the quantum cascade building within their modified power core. The conversion beam is beginning to analyze our reactor design. Molecular breakdown of the containment field will begin in approximately 40 seconds. Captain Shin activated the ship's internal communication system. All hands, this is the captain. In 30 seconds, we're going to find out whether human engineering can surprise beings that have conquered half the galaxy. Whatever happens, I want you to know that serving with all of you has been the greatest honor of my life. Throughout the ship, crew members took their positions with the quiet dignity of people who had chosen their fate. In engineering, Chief Webb made final adjustments to systems that would either save millions of lives or simply create a very expensive funeral pyre. In the medical bay, Dr. Rodriguez secured emergency supplies for survivors who might not exist in a few minutes. The conversion beam continued its relentless work, breaking down the Redemption's hull layer by layer. On the planet below, Administrator Veltar watched with his people as their would-be rescuers faced destruction to give the Kelethi one final chance at survival. Conversion process reaching the reactor core, Dr. Kim announced. The processor unit is attempting to analyze our power generation systems. Captain Chun gripped her command chair as the ship shuddered under forces that operated beyond normal physics. Chief Webb, are you ready? As ready as anyone can be for controlled insanity, Captain. Dr. Kim, quantum cascade is building to critical threshold. When that conversion beam hits our modified containment field, the moment stretched like a held breath across the galaxy. Then, the alien beam penetrated the Redemption's power core and encountered Chief Webb's modifications, a maze of quantum feedback loops and containment failures designed to create the single most unstable reaction possible within the confined space of a Starship reactor. What happened next redefined several laws of physics. The explosion didn't begin in the Redemption. It began in the conversion beam itself, as energy meant to break down matter encountered quantum structures specifically designed to become more unstable the more they were analyzed. The feedback loop traveled back through the beam at the speed of light, carrying with it a cascade failure that the processor unit systems couldn't comprehend or contain. The lead processor unit, a construct that had devoured entire star systems, simply ceased to exist. The explosion that consumed it created a quantum shockwave that propagated through the conversion fleet's interconnected communication and control systems. One by one, the remaining processor units began to fail as their shared knowledge network became contaminated with the impossible quantum mathematics of Chief Webb's sabotage. Units that had operated flawlessly for centuries found their conversion beams turning inward, their harvester drones attacking their own systems, their processing centers consuming themselves in recursive feedback loops. In 17 minutes, an entire invasion fleet that had terrorized the galaxy for months destroyed itself, trying to understand how a single human engineer had turned their greatest strength, their ability to learn and adapt, into their ultimate weakness. The Redemption, at the epicenter of the explosion that saved the Kelethi system, was gone. But the blast had been precisely calculated, large enough to trigger the cascade failure, small enough to leave the planet itself intact. On Kelethi Prime, the survivors emerged from their underground shelters to find clear skies for the first time in weeks. Administrator Veltar stood on the surface of his homeworld, looking up at stars that were no longer obscured by mechanical horrors, and wept for the humans who had given their lives to make this moment possible. The evacuation proceeded with desperate efficiency. Kelethi ships that had hidden in deep caves for weeks launched toward orbit, carrying nearly 500,000 refugees to safety. Other vessels, hastily repaired and pressed into service, managed to transport another 250,000 to neighboring systems before the last of the conversion debris finished burning up in the planet's atmosphere. In the end, 1.7 million Kelethi survived the crisis that had been expected to claim all 4 billion lives in the system. News of humanity's sacrifice spread throughout the galaxy faster than light itself. On Station Prime, the council chambers fell silent as representatives processed the implications of what had occurred. A single human ship, against impossible odds, had not only saved millions of lives, but had eliminated a threat that the combined military forces of the galaxy had been unable to defeat. Ambassador Zeth Kree found himself staring at the tactical reports with something approaching awe. They didn't just save the Calathi, he murmured to his aide. They solved the problem that had stumped our best strategic minds for months. How did they know their plan would work? The aide, a young Valerian who had monitored human communications throughout the crisis, looked up from her datapad. Ambassador, based on their internal communications, they didn't know. They hoped. The difference appears to be significant to their species. Speaker Morgeth called an emergency session of the full council to address the aftermath of humanity's intervention. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered to debate not just the immediate consequences of the mission, but the fundamental implications of having a species willing to sacrifice everything for other survival. The humans acted without authorization, Representative HFY argued. Their intervention, while successful, sets a dangerous precedent for unilateral action by member species. Representative Nixandra's collective voice carried notes of profound consideration. The humans achieved in days what our combined forces had been unable to accomplish in months. Perhaps the precedent they've set is one we should consider emulating rather than condemning. The debate continued for hours, but it was interrupted by an unexpected transmission from Earth itself. The planet that had nearly destroyed itself decades ago was speaking directly to the galactic community for the first time. The face that appeared on the communication screens belonged to an elderly human woman with silver hair and eyes that held depths of experience that seemed older than her years. She wore simple clothing and spoke with quiet authority that filled the vast council chambers. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, I am Director Elena Vasquez of the Earth Coalition Council. I come before you not to apologize for the actions of Captain Shun and her crew, but to explain them. Speaker Morgeth's crystalline form pulsed with formal acknowledgement. Director Vasquez, the Council welcomes communication from Earth's leadership. We wish to express our condolences for the loss of the Redemption and her crew. Thank you, Speaker Morgeth. But Captain Shun and her people are not lost. They're exactly where they chose to be, doing exactly what they chose to do. They represent the choice humanity made when we looked into the abyss of our own making and decided who we wanted to become. Director Vasquez paused, and when she continued, her voice carried the weight of a species transformation. 57 years ago, my world nearly ended because we believed that strength meant the ability to destroy our enemies. We learned, in the shadow of extinction, that true strength means the willingness to sacrifice ourselves for others' survival. Representative HFY's warrior instincts struggled with the concept. Director Vasquez, such philosophy is noble, but impractical on a galactic scale. The universe contains threats that cannot be defeated through sacrifice alone. Representative HFY, you misunderstand our philosophy. We don't believe sacrifice alone solves problems. We believe that the willingness to sacrifice everything gives you the clarity to find solutions that others miss. Captain Shun and her crew didn't die to save the Calathi. They were willing to die to save the Calathi, and that willingness opened strategic possibilities that more cautious approaches would never have discovered. Dr. Rodriguez, who had survived the Redemption's destruction in an escape pod launched seconds before the explosion, had been rescued by Calathi ships and was now participating in the council session via quantum communication. Honored Council, she said, I was privileged to serve with Captain Shun during our mission. What you must understand is that humanity doesn't see rescue operations as acts of charity or political strategy. We see them as acts of self-definition. Every time we choose to help others, we choose who we are as a species. The council chambers fell silent as representatives contemplated a philosophy that redefined the very nature of galactic civilization. For centuries, interstellar politics have been based on the principle of enlightened self-interest. Species cooperated because cooperation benefited everyone involved. Humanity was proposing something entirely different, cooperation based not on mutual benefit, but on mutual responsibility. Administrator Veltar, attending the session as a representative of the Calathi refugees, rose to address the assembly. Honor Council. The Calathi people have experienced humanity's philosophy firsthand. They came to our dying world not because they hoped to gain anything from us, but because they believed our survival mattered. This is not weakness. This is a strength beyond any weapon or technology. Speaker Morgeth's ancient mind struggled to process the implications. Director Vasquez, if humanity's intention is to intervene in every crisis throughout the galaxy, the resources required would be enormous. Even with the best intentions, your species lacks the ships, personnel, and technology to serve as galactic guardians. Director Vasquez smiled, and for the first time, representatives across the galaxy saw something that would become legendary in the years to come. The smile of a human who had been underestimated. Speaker Morgeth, you're absolutely correct. Humanity alone cannot guard the galaxy. But humanity doesn't have to be alone. Captain Shun proved that when people see others willing to risk everything for strangers, they start asking themselves what they're willing to risk for their neighbors. She gestured to data streams appearing on the Council's displays. In the 3 days since news of the Redemption's sacrifice reached the galaxy's communication networks, we have received volunteer applications from over 47 species. Military personnel, medical staff, engineers, even civilians wanting to help with refugee relocation. They're asking to join rescue operations that don't exist yet, simply because they've seen what becomes possible when someone refuses to let others suffer alone. The data was staggering. Beings from across the galaxy, species that had barely interacted with each other, were volunteering to risk their lives for strangers they had never met, inspired by the example of a single human ship that had faced impossible odds rather than abandoned those in need. Representative Nixandra's collective voice carried new harmonics of possibility. Director Vasquez, are you proposing the formation of some kind of galactic rescue organization? I'm proposing that humanity offer what we learned in our darkest hour to anyone willing to help ensure that no one else has to go through such darkness alone. We can provide training, support, coordination, but the real work, the work that matters, has to be done by people who choose to do it because it's right, not because it's profitable or safe. As the council session concluded, representatives returned to their home worlds carrying news that would reshape galactic civilization. Humanity had demonstrated something that theorists had claimed was impossible: a sustainable civilization based not on competition or even cooperation, but on active protection of the vulnerable. Within a year, the Galactic Rescue Coordination Alliance was formed, headquartered at Station Prime, but staffed by volunteers from hundreds of species. The organization's charter was simple: no sentient being should face extinction, disaster, or oppression alone while others have the power to help. The Alliance's first major operation was the evacuation of the Hesperian colony, threatened by an unstable star. The rescue fleet included ships from 37 different species, all flying under a new flag that bore a simple inscription in every known language: no one goes through it alone. Captain Shun and the crew of the Redemption were posthumously honored with the Alliance's highest decoration, and their names were inscribed on the memorial wall at Alliance headquarters. But their true memorial was something far more significant: a galaxy where the strong protected the weak, not from duty or law, but from choice. 50 years later, when young beings across the galaxy learned about the early days of the Alliance, they would hear the story of humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. How Earth's children arrived scarred by their own survival, carrying the hard-won wisdom that strength without compassion was just destruction waiting for an excuse. They would learn how Captain Shun and her crew chose certain death over probable abandonment of those in need, and how that choice echoed across the stars until it became a new principle of civilization itself. And in the darkest moments, when new threats emerged to challenge the galaxy's peace, beings would remember the human promise that had started it all: no one will ever make you go through it alone. In the end, that promise became more than humanity's gift to the galaxy. It became the galaxy's gift to itself, a reminder that the measure of any civilization is not what it can achieve for itself, but what it will sacrifice for others. The stars themselves seemed brighter for the knowledge that somewhere among them, there were always those who watched, who cared, and who would come running when someone needed help, no matter the cost. And that perhaps was humanity's greatest victory, teaching the galaxy that the strongest force in the universe is not technology or weapons or even wisdom, but the simple refusal to let anyone face their darkest hour alone.